Hello everyone, I'm Nitsahone, and it is Friday, and that means it's time for another MTG Top 10. This week we're looking at a creature type, birds. If you haven't figured out by now from my intro animation, I like birds. In real life, my fiance and I volunteered at a local wildlife rehabilitation place where our main contribution is rescuing injured birds in the community and bringing them there so they can be rehabilitated. So yeah, birds are kind of part of my life, and this has been a list I've wanted to do for a long time, and I thought now was as good a time as any. There are about 250 cards in Magic that either make bird creature tokens or have the bird creature type across all 5 colors, and those are the kind of cards we're going to be looking at on this list. To be eligible for this list, you have to have a bird creature type or make a bird token. I did exclude one card that technically met those parameters though, Swan Song. Since it doesn't make a bird for you, I decided not to count it. Now for a quick reminder on how I score these. Pro Tour, Legacy, and Vintage Championship top 8s are worth 2 points, and Grand Prix top 8s are worth 1 point. Now on to number 10. At number 10 is a card that was kind of Kitchen Finks before Kitchen Finks, and that is Aven Riftwatcher. Obviously, it isn't quite as strong as the Finks, but it has aggressive stats and gains you 4 life, so there are some similarities. It saw a little play in Time Spiral Block Constructed, showing up in a black-white control deck, but it was most impactful in Standard, where it was one of the many cards that helped enable Revelark decks. It was good there because you could play it early and get in for some flying damage, and after it went to the graveyard because of vanishing, it was one of the creatures you could get back with Revelark, and you could start the whole cycle over again. This was especially potent against aggressive decks. At number 9, we have the only creature who doesn't actually have the bird creature type to make the list, and that is Emiria Angel. But she makes bird creature tokens every time you play a land, and that's pretty nice when combined with a solid 3/3 flying body. It really only saw play in Standard, where it was in one of the more dominant decks of Standard in recent memory, and that was Caw-Blade. It played well there because even if the Angel got killed, you probably had a few bird tokens running around who you could attach your ridiculously powerful equipment to. At number 8 is the oldest card to make the list, and that is Cloudchaser Eagle. A 4-mana 2/2 flyer that blows up an enchantment. Doesn't seem like anything special today. However, it was in what was basically the first toolbox deck ever, Recurring Survival, sort of the precursor to the Birthing Pod and Court of Calling decks of more recent memory. This deck ran both Survival of the Fittest and Recurring Nightmare. Obviously, the two synergized quite well together, as you could use Survival of the Fittest to discard a huge monster, while also searching up a toolbox creature like Cloudchaser Eagle to blow up a problem enchantment, like, your opponent's Survival of the Fittest. And then you could reanimate whatever you discarded with Recurring Nightmare. That kind of synergy was powerful, and Cloudchaser Eagle was a singleton in those decks, which for a brief moment in time was very powerful. At Worlds in 1998, 4 of the top 8 decks were running Cloudchaser Eagle. Recurring Nightmare was banned shortly thereafter, though, and this eagle never chased any clouds again after that. At number 7, we have a card that was never legal in Standard or Modern, but still manages to make the list, and that is, of course, Baleful Strix. Printed first in Plane Chase, it was only legal in Eternal formats, but that was just fine with the Strix. It has settled in quite nicely in Legacy. A 2-mana 1/1 flyer who is always a 2-for-1 is a good deal. Doesn't hurt that it's an artifact either. Legacy control decks are where this sees the most play, in various Delver decks and in 4-color control. At number 6, we have a bird that always brings along some friends, and that is Squadron Hawk. A 2-mana 1/1 flyer isn't good, but one that draws you 3 cards? Yeah, that's pretty good. Squadron Hawk saw a ludicrous amount of play in Standard, in part because it is where the Caw part of Caw-Blade comes from. It provided huge card advantage, and worked well with equipment thanks to its evasion, and it worked perfectly alongside Jace the Mind Sculptor and Stoneforged Mystic. How this relatively small bird is able to carry a sword is beyond me, but hey, it did some serious damage with them. It has seen play outside of Standard a little bit. It picked up 1 Grand Prix top 8 in a white weenie deck in Extended, and a couple of Grand Prix top 8s in Modern in Martyr Life decks, which liked when you had white cards in your hand and when you played creatures, and hey, Squadron Hawk provides both of those things. Martyr Life and Soul Sisters both like this card, but both currently operate on the fringes of Modern and haven't really put up any big finishes with it in a while, but I guess there's always a chance that these Hawks find their way into another Modern top 8. At number 5, we have a weird-looking bird, which makes sense because it's a bird mutant, and that is Cloudfin Raptor. Obviously, a 1-mana 0/1 isn't what you want to be doing, but the evolved mechanic made it so that as you curved out, it got bigger and became more of a threat for your opponent, which is pretty nice for only a 1-mana investment. It saw all of its play in Standard in one of the most dominant decks of the time, Devotion to Blue. It has never seen play in non-rotating formats, and it isn't a good candidate to do so. At number 4, we have a bird that can counter spells, and one that saw play alongside Cloudfin Raptor, and that is Judge's Familiar. Curse Catcher gets all the attention for being a merfolk and fitting into tribal decks, but Judge's Familiar is strictly better. You can play it in a mono white or mono blue deck. You can only play Curse Catcher in blue decks, and it has flying, so take that, Curse Catcher. But really, a creature like this is pretty nice. You can play it on turn 1, hit your opponent with it a few times, and then it becomes a real pain when it makes their removal cost more mana. While it has never managed to break through in non-rotating formats like the inferior Curse Catcher has, it's up play in both block and standard. In block, it put up a Pro Tour top 8 in a Selesnya aggro deck, and its main home in standard was in Devotion to blue decks alongside Cloudfin Raptor. At number 3, I have a bird that hates fetch lands, Aven Mindcensor. This card has been in Standard twice, and it was not a relevant card in those formats either time, though to be fair, it still has some time in Standard right now. However, it's been a powerful card in formats where people search their libraries a lot, especially with fetch lands. Casting this in response to your opponent using a fetch land and then failing to find the proper land in the top 4 is incredibly powerful. You basically play Stone Rain and get a 2/1 flying body to go with it. This means it sees a lot of play in all of the non-rotating formats. In Modern, it combines particularly well with commonly played cards like Path to Exile and Ghost Quarter, and that is the format it's the most successful in. It was particularly important during the era of Birthing Pod, as the Mindcensor could single-handedly shut down that deck. It still sees play today in decks like Hate Bear and Elves. In Legacy, it's a fixture in Death and Taxes decks, and in the past, it saw play in various versions of Maverick. At number 2, we have a bird that almost always brings a friend along with it, Wingmate Roc. It really only saw play in Standard, but it was very, very powerful there. A 5-mana 3/4 flyer that gains you 1 life for every attacking creature isn't special, but this was played in creature-heavy decks that basically always were able to raid ahead of playing it, maybe attacking with your Siege Rhino, so it usually amounted to a bird version of Broodmate Dragon. Because of its sheer power, it saw play in most decks running white for the 2 years it was in Standard. Abzan was its most prominent home, but Mardu and Jeskai were also happy to cast Wingmate Roc. At number 1, we have the only green card to make the list, and the one that no one is surprised to see at number 1, and that is, of course, Birds of Paradise. A 0-mana 0/1 with flying that can tap to add mana of any color, the bird was, for a very long time, considered the best mana dork in the game. One could argue that today it's maybe been surpassed by Deathrite Shaman and maybe Noble Hierarch, but for almost 2 decades, Birds of Paradise was the gold standard for mana dorks, and its historical dominance is enough for it to be number 1 on this list, and it was also number 1 on the top 10 mana dorks list. It has seen play every year since the game began, and there aren't that many cards that can say that. It's been reprinted tons of times, so going over every deck it has seen play in would be really boring, so we'll look at some of its greatest hits. It has seen play in many different Standard environments thanks to all the reprints, seen play at Magic's very first competitive tournament ever, World in 1994, where it appeared in 4 of the top 8 deck lists. Its dominance would continue throughout the years, seeing play in Fires of Yavimaya and opposition decks in the early 2000s, and in Fairy and Doran decks in the mid-2000s, and in Kessig Titan decks in the early 2010s. In Modern, it saw play in Birthing Pod, and after that deck got banned, it transitioned into Collected Company and Court of Calling decks since the banning of the pod. The bird will continue to see play, and it has a firm grasp on the number 1 spot on this list, and I don't see any card challenging it anytime soon. That does it for this MTG Top 10. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like it and share it so others can enjoy it too. If you want to make sure you catch future MTG Top 10s, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching.